Today we're going to be ranking all of the completed deals in the Premier League. There's a lot of them. In fact, in total, there's over 50. I've narrowed that down to 40. The way I've done that is I've removed sort of youth team signings, players that have rejoined a club that they spent last season on loan at. As we go through, I'll explain how I made my decisions. We've got 5 different tiers. Elite move, smart deal, player that needs time, and oh dear, oh dear. Let's go in reverse alphabetical order today, because we usually start with the A's. Let's start with the W's. Wolves and Pedro Lima, who I think certainly is going to need some time. Another young signing by Wolves with a massively high ceiling. Of course, he was the player that was involved in the battle between Blueco. It was supposedly Strasbourg/Chelsea trying to sign him. He's ended up at Wolves, still only 18 years old. I don't want to spend loads of time on every single player here because we've got 40 to get through. I don't want to ruin your day. Next up, Gary O'Neill has brought in a number 9, a big number 9 as well. Jurgen Strand Larsen, of course, the 6'4" Celta Vigo striker, who really had an outstanding campaign last year in La Liga, scoring 13 goals. I think this move is an initial €3 million loan with a €27 million option to buy. Although his goodbye video to Celta Vigo makes it pretty clear that this one's going to be made permanent. And although I spoke about him having a really standout campaign for Celta Vigo last season, it is only the second time in his career he's put up more than 10 league goals in a single campaign. Now, he's only 24, so plenty of time to address that. There are going to be big demands of him, though, from this number 9. I think his best attributes really are dropping a little bit deeper and bringing other players into the game. He should suit a player like Mateus Cunha down to the ground. I do think he's going to need some time, though. Wolves have also signed Tommy Doyle, but he was on loan there last season, wasn't he? So let's skip straight to Rodrigo Gomez, another player who's going to need time. What you notice with these Wolves signings, they generally are players for the future. Still in 21 years old, of course, Atletico Madrid were trying to sign him. He can operate as a sort of a wing-back/wide midfielder. Much better going forward than he is going backwards. I expect him to sort of provide cover/compete with Nelson Semedo in that right wing-back slot when he moves to a back 3/back 5 system. Gary O'Neill, 7 goals, 7 assists last season for Estoril. Highly, highly coveted by a lot of teams in Europe, but still very young. Because there's so many names, I think this needs time column could fill up pretty quickly. I mean, Luis Guilherme, obviously a young signing, big money signing ready for West Ham. But coming from the Brazilian League at age 18, very exciting, but still very raw. That brings us on to the most established name we've come across so far. It's Max Kilman joining West Ham for £40 million, which is a big old fee on the face of it. But when you remember he's worked extensively with Julian Lopetegui, knows his system, there are lots of positives with this deal. First and foremost is his consistency. He's always available, 37, 38 starts across his last 2 seasons. Excellent with the ball at his feet, coming from that futsal background, but also a leader. Was promoted, of course, to Wolves captain last season under Gary O'Neill. This is a big transfer for West Ham, with Carrere and Ogbonna also leaving the club. That leaves the 3 centre-back options as Mavropanos, who's a bit hit and miss in his return season to the Premier League, Kurt Zouma, who has had injury problems, and Naef Aguerd, who, of course, has to go to AFCON. So, yes, £40 million is a big fee, but it's punchy. I think it's quite a smart deal. I see lots of upside. You know, West Ham were very interested in Harry Maguire last season. Bringing Max Kilman through the door now, a younger option to Harry Maguire, plenty of Premier League experience and know-how with the system with the manager that's just joined. It's a bit expensive, but I think it just sneaks into smart deal. Archie Gray to Tottenham is up next, and he could really go into needs time. But I think he's that good. I don't know whether he will need that much time. His experience in the Championship, of course, is so vast. The amount of minutes he put up last season were so massive that I really think he can have a big impact on this Tottenham team at a high level immediately. I think some of these Wolves players, and potentially Guilherme could too, but I'm not sure they're quite as ready to have an impact as Archie Gray is at Premier League level. I think this is one of the best transfers you will see this summer. Honestly, I cannot believe more clubs were not in for Archie Gray. But seriously, for Tottenham to get this deal over the line is monstrous. Let's go to Southampton then, who have, of course, confirmed the signing of Adam Lallana. I mean, it's not oh dear, is it? Because he's probably going in there more as a coaching support player to Russell Martin. They need some experience of Premier League football in that dressing room. They've brought that in with him, with Charlie Taylor, but he's not going to play a huge amount of football, is he? 800 minutes last season at Brighton. it's alright. For just £6 million, I think you'd have to say that Sugawara is probably a smart deal. With the future of Kyle Walker-Peters currently hanging in the balance, is he or is he not going to go to West Ham or another Premier League club? Bringing a player of Sugawara's quality into the club is an obvious win. 3,000 minutes of top European football in the Eredivisie last season, of course, producing really big output in forward areas. Some of these numbers are absolutely exceptional. His non-penalty expected goals and assists through the roof, really. It's going to be interesting to see how Russell Martin sort of counters these defensive numbers. In that AZ team, he was very, very attacking. But at 24 years old, I've got him in smart deal because the fee is just so much cheaper than Larsson's if his gets made permanent. 30 million to 6 million, it's a lot cheaper. Southampton have also bought in, I don't know how, this one slipped by my mind completely, Charlie Taylor. Again, a bit like Lallana. It's alright. They clearly need Premier League experience, and that's what he's going to provide them. It's going to be interesting, though, to see whether or not Russell Martin goes for the 4 at the back that we saw the majority of last season in the Championship, or does he move to a 3 at the back, utilise Sugawara more as a right wing-back, and then play Charlie Taylor maybe as a left wing-back that can shuttle into a back 4 when he needs to. But is he going to usurp Ryan Manning if they play a wing-back system? Not for me. Of course, Southampton have also bought in Harwood Bellis and Flynn Downs, but they were at the club, so they're not in this list. Let's go to Nottingham Forest, and some smart business being done from them. I really think they've had a good start to this summer. First and foremost, Elliot Anderson coming through the door for, on the surface of it, a £35 million fee, which seems massive. But this was very much a PSR-related transfer, wasn't it? So that £35 million fee on the surface of it looks huge, but when you consider that Vlachodimos went to Newcastle for a reported £20 million, by the way, this then sort of becomes a £15 to £20 million signing, which I like. Last season at 20 years old was a real breakthrough campaign. 1,000 Premier League minutes for Elliot Anderson last season, and while the numbers are kind of skewed because it's not a huge sample size, what you see from him is an excellent player progressing the ball, really good in tight spaces and working out of that press. Actually fairly decent in the box contribution as well. Top 15% of midfielders for non-penalty expected goals and assists, and the classic Eddie Howe system means he's going to work very hard off the ball. There's not much downside if you take into account the PSR related fee. It's somewhere between smart deal and needs time. Let's put him in needs time because he's still only 20. On the topic of Forest signings, Milenkovic, I think this is a great deal. It's just me that can't believe Forest have pulled this one off at €15 million. Still only 26 years old. I mean, he's been linked to the Premier League for about the last 6 seasons, hasn't he? He's finally got his move. An excellent player. Worked really well in that Fiorentina system. He's taken them to 3 finals in the last 2 years. A leader, a commander, a battler. The idea of him playing alongside Murillo really excites me. €15 million is a snip, man. I don't know how he snuck in here, but I've accidentally put Stamenic in there. And obviously, he's gone on loan straight away to Olympiacos. So, I suppose he has to be in the Oh dear. We mentioned him earlier, Vlachodimos. There are differing reports about this fee. I initially read £20 million. Newcastle fans, let me know if I'm just miles off there. But both the reports I read claimed a substantial profit on the €9.3 million they paid in the first place, Forest. How many goalkeepers have Newcastle got now? Honestly, it feels like it's a lot. Now, clearly, if Dubravka goes, this one makes a little bit more sense. But if you sort the Premier League goalkeepers by post-shot expected goals, Vlachodimos was struggling at Forest. He let in 4 more than he should have. Maybe he's just coming in as a backup, but the fee, I'm going to have to take it on face value. Feels large. I'm going to put him in meh. Lloyd Kelly, on the other hand, is clearly a very astute bit of business. Newcastle's backline absolutely decimated by injury. Sven Botman and Jamal Lascelles picking up ACL injuries. Botman expected back end of September, October maybe. Jamal Lascelles a little bit after that. Lloyd Kelly can provide cover at left back and at left centre back. Yes, he finally got ousted by Senesi and Zabani, who formed a really good partnership there. But this has cost no money. To Manchester United, and haven't spoken to you guys since Lenny Yoro officially joined the club. I cannot believe United managed to get this deal done. Now, obviously, people will just throw the money card down. Absolutely, I'm sure that played a significant factor, United bidding such a big amount to Lille for his services and agreeing to pay him a much larger wage than potentially Real Madrid would do. But United have managed to secure, whatever way you look at it, one of the premier talents in the centre-back role in the whole of Europe. And to be honest with you, I'm tempted to put him in an elite move. I genuinely think this is an astonishingly good signing by Manchester United. The drawback comes around the money and the fact he definitely is going to need time. Is he going to get time though? Unless there are more sales, maybe Lindelof goes and Matthias de Ligt comes in. But as we stand today, he's United's starting centre-back, which is a risk. But the talent level is so high with Lenny Yoro. I'm leaving it an elite move. I'm going to get hammered in the comments. As for Joshua Zirkzee, I think this one's a smart deal, right? A player of his calibre for that fee, it was a reported £34 million. Maybe United paid a little bit more than that to spread the deal across 3 years. Whatever, still feels pretty cheap for a 23-year-old who had a remarkable season last year in a Bologna side that managed to get Champions League football that offers something totally different to Rasmus Højlund. The fact he can drop deep and link play, bring players like Rashford and Garnacho into the side, offers Manchester United a totally different way of playing. And that really does excite me. I think the fee's good, the age is good, the reported wage is really good. Not much downside to this one. Into City we go, and Savio for a reported fee of 21 million, rising to just over 30 million pounds. Obviously, it's easier deal to do because he's part of the CFG already, but clearly it's a smart move. An absolutely phenomenal dribbler, so fun to watch, can go both ways, super powerful, can play on both flanks, 19 goal involvements last season, putting up over 3 successful take-ons, over 5 progressive carries per 90. You think of Doku, exciting, electric, Jack Grealish still at the club, Phil Foden, Oscar Bob, Bernardo Silva can play wide, now Savio. I mean, it's deep, isn't it? Into Leicester we go, and you'll notice Fatawu isn't here because he was on loan there last season, so I didn't want to have to speak about him. But we should speak about Akoli, who of course put up 32 starts for Frosinone last season. And it's going to be interesting to see how he's utilised in that Leicester backline, because is Steve Cooper going to go with a 4, or in my opinion more likely he's going to operate with a 3-back? And when you think of the options Leicester have got on their books, Wout Faes and Vestergaard put up the 3rd and 4th most minutes of any player in the squad last season, so it's likely they're both going to start. Both players struggled last time in the Premier League. Connor Cody only put up 800 odd minutes of football last season under Maresca. He might well be trusted a little bit more in the Premier League because of his experience under Steve Cooper. Then you've got Harry Souttar, who just didn't get a look in last season. I would say they lack physicality back there, and that is something Akoli can provide. So I think I'm actually going to put him in smart deal. It ticks a lot of boxes, and for a fee sub 15 million euros, it's quite impressive. Bobby De Cordova-Reid also joined Leicester, by the way. Am I the only one that missed this? 31 years old. Do I see him operating in the right wing-back role if he plays the 3-back with Ricardo Pereira there? Not necessarily. Maybe he plays a 3-4-3, Ricardo Pereira and Bobby De Cordova-Reid out on that right-hand side. If that's the case, then it's a smart signing, isn't it? Because he's a free transfer. Into the Ipswich boys we go. Liam Delap, I certainly think you'd have to put him in needs time. Actually really good creative numbers last season at Hull, putting up top 10% of non-European top 5 league players for shot creating actions, over 3.5 per 90. So very impressive in that role. And managed to contribute to 10 goals in 31 appearances, but he's still just 20. Not a lot of Premier League football under his belt. Give him some time. As for Ben Johnson, I mean, I think it's actually a pretty decent free transfer, this. He's not a nailed-on star, but he had a really high-level ceiling at one point in his West Ham career. He has been pretty decent for the England youth sides as well. And for a 23-year-old, he's got quite a lot of Premier League experience, which Ipswich are definitely going to need. Let's not forget his breakthrough season for West Ham, where he first picked up Premier League minutes, was 2017-2018. Jacob Greaves, I think also, you would have to argue, is a smart bit of business, given that he picked up all 3 of Hull City's Player of the Year awards. He was in the Championship Team of the Season as the centre-back. An outstanding campaign for the Tigers. And at 23 years old, for £15 million, these numbers are super well-rounded. He's pretty much injury-free, 43 appearances in the Championship last season. Even Muric, you'd have to say, is a smart bit of business. When he came into Burnley last season to replace James Trafford, who'd had a really poor time of it, he actually really improved the side. In fact, I spoke about Vlachodimos being down amongst the bottom end of this. Have a look at Muric. By expected goals, he saved 6.7 more than he should have, and he put up just 10 90 minutes. The underlying numbers are exceptional. The age is decent at 24. Comes from big club stock at Manchester City. I like this bit of business. We go to Everton next. I've not included Timo Rogbenen, and I've also not included Jack Harrison. Tim's because of his PSR issues, and Jack because of the fact he's joined on a second-year loan. But we will include Ilian Ndiaye, and we really like Ilian Ndiaye. This transfer nearly went through, of course, the season before. He ended up going to Marseille. Numbers weren't great in France. I think 6 goal involvements in 30-odd starts, but let's forget about that. Let's forget about his time in France and focus on that final season at Sheffield United. What he was able to produce in the Championship was magnificent. And what he adds to this Everton team could be huge. It could add a really well-rounded player, somebody that can not only score goals, but can actually pick the ball up a little bit deeper and progress it. Both his dribbling and his passing, his creative numbers really stacked up. But for a decent fee, still a good age as well, this is a great signing. Let's go to Crystal Palace. A couple of good bits of business early doors done by Ole Glasner's side. The first of which is to reunite with Daichi Kamada, who of course he worked with at Frankfurt on a free as well. I mean, it's a smart bit of business, isn't it? With Elise leaving the side, you do lose some creativity, more from wide areas, but you lose out on 16 goal involvements last season. Now, I don't think Daichi Kamada is going to put up those numbers, but his well-rounded attacking midfield nature, his tenacity off the ball, and his goal creation is impressive. It's even more impressive when you don't have to pay for it. They've also signed Chadi Riyad from Betis. Now, he is a left-footed centre-back, isn't he? When I think of him for Betis, it's much more on that left-hand side of the defence. If that's the case, what does this mean for Mark Gahey? We saw Glasner kind of operating with more of a 3 at the back, with Nathaniel Klein tucking in at times as a right-sided centre-back. So does Gahey just go to the right centre-back role? Anderson as the central centre-back, and then Riyad as the left-sided centre-back? He's still only 20 years old, so I think he probably needs some time to assimilate with the league, but he's got a super high ceiling. Whatever you read about him is very positive, comes from top-level La Masia stock. You know, Barcelona were pretty reticent to let him go when he went to Betis for €3 million. Give him some time, but I'm interested to see how Glasner uses it. Let's go to Chelsea. Been extremely active. I've not included Mark Yu in here. Might be a little bit harsh, but I have included Kiernan Dewsbury Hall. Where would you put Kiernan Dewsbury Hall? Let's start with the good things. Kiernan Dewsbury Hall, excellent on the ball. Worked with Maresca before, so knows the system inside out, and I think that's probably one of the key reasons he's joined the club. But the midfield roster is pretty stacked. Enzo, Caicedo, Conor Gallagher, Chukwuemeka, Lavia. I mean, Palmer's going to want to play as a 10. Come in from that right-hand side potentially. Where does Kiernan Dewsbury Hall fit into that list? The answer, if we're being honest, is probably the Conor Gallagher replacement. And if that's the case, fine. I suppose it's kind of a smart deal. It's a bit meh for me, but I think he is a really good player, very attractive to watch, and it jumps up there because of his Enzo Maresca connection, I think. £30 million feels fair for both parties. Next up, we've got Veiga coming in from Basel. Still only 20, so certainly needs time, but my word is he physical. Some of the packages I've watched of him, some of the things I've heard about him, very strong lad. 6'3", can operate as a defensive midfielder, which we saw at times Basel, but also kind of on the left-hand side of the defence, either as a left-back, but more of an inverted left-back. And I think that's probably how Maresca is going to look to use him if he doesn't loan him out. Doesn't look like he's going to get loaned out. So if that's the case, maybe this is the end of Ben Chilwell. Either way, very young. Let's give him some time. Tosin, we can put straight into smart deal. Really intelligent bit of business from Chelsea to snap him up when Newcastle were very interested as well. It is kind of sad, though, that it means the end of Trevor Chalobah. Like, I think the treatment of Trevor Chalobah is slightly questionable by Chelsea. For me, he is one of their better centre-backs, and to not take him on that pre-season tour might be seen as some, and the player, as disrespectful, which you would never want to be with an academy player who really is pushing to be a starting centre-back at the club. But if he does leave, Chelsea have already got their business done early. Tosin coming through the door. Excellent season on and off the ball at Fulham last year. I expect pretty big things from him. Brighton have been one of the busiest teams in here. I haven't included Yalkuye, who of course joined from Gothenburg recently, or Kozia Dewsbury, who joined from Arsenal. Looks like he might actually have some senior involvement, but I couldn't include everybody. So instead, let's start with Osman, I think, who has come in for £16 million at 19 years old and feels like the next off of the production line of Brighton signings from random leagues. Like, this is a Nordstrand pickup. He can operate on both flanks. Really intelligent off the ball runs as well, but certainly going to need time. Next, we've got Mats Wiefer. They've clearly been doing their scouting of Feyenoord, haven't they, with Minter coming in as well. But let's start with Mats Wiefer, who had an amazing season again in the Eredivisie. A very well-rounded player in that Arne Slot system. Yes, he can sit as the 6, but he can also push higher up the pitch. Excellent on-the-ball ability, as you would expect in that Arne Slot midfield. Very diverse. Really astute business, I think, at 30 million euros. There were rumours linking him with some much bigger and better sides, no offence to Brighton, across Europe, and they've managed to get this deal done. I think they needed a player like Mats Wiefer in that midfield to complement players like Billy Gilmour, who might leave the club to Napoli. That'd be so sad. To complement players like Carlos Baleba. Bit of composure in there. I really like this move. I also love the Minter signing. Such a good bit of business. Obviously, Newcastle didn't want to have to sell him. This was a PSR forced sale. He was close to joining Lyon. That move fell through. Brighton managed to capitalise. The fee is quite chunky. £30 million is big for a player who really has only just broken through in senior football, but his output for Feyenoord last season on loan was just so impressive. In attacking areas, he was so dangerous in and around the box. In 1v1 situations, you were dead. Nearly 8 progressive carries per 90 from that right wing slot. Newcastle will have been annoyed at losing him because the right wing slot is a potentially upgradable area for them. When you look at Miguel Almiron, I'm pretty sure they would have thought Minter could challenge him for a starting spot this coming season. Igor Thiago, yeah, let's put him in smart deal as well. I think the reason I've got him in smart deal is more contextual, because they got this business done so early, Brentford. They got this deal done in January with the thought in mind that Ivan Toney's not going to sign a new deal. He's probably going to want to leave in the summer. You have to applaud them for getting the business done so quickly, getting that cover in there ready to go. And at £30 million, his goal-scoring record across the last 2 seasons seems pretty justified. It is a big leap from the Belgian League straight into the Premier League, and it's not always been successful, but I just kind of trust Brentford's scouting department. Okay, Aston Villa, one of the busiest sides in the Premier League already. Absolutely. Let's just run through all of these players, shall we? Starting with Ross Barkley. The remontada was glorious to watch. He was such a fun player to watch, wasn't he, last season, that relegation battle before Luton. And he's a free transfer, so there's not a lot of downside. But with the other additions they made in the midfield area this summer and the players they already had in their books in midfield, I don't know. Let's come back to him. Let's go to Baranchea, who needs time. He is 23 years old now. Last season was really his breakthrough campaign at Frosinone. Of course, he suffered that ACL injury, didn't he, in 2021, which has kind of set his development back a couple of years. If you think back to his days in Argentina when he broke through, he was part of the deal for Douglas Luiz, which overall I think is just about a net positive, but he's definitely going to need time to show it. As for Jadon Philogene, yeah, I think this is a smart deal, and I'm not even going to put him in needs time. I think Jadon Philogene is ready to have an instant impact, especially with Moussa Diaby moving to Saudi. At 22 years old, coming off the back of the season he's just put up for Hull in the Championship, he is ready to step up to the Premier League. He was one of the best players in the Championship last season. Certainly one of the best wide talents. He's so fun to watch. The Moussa Diaby minutes are available. You know, Leon Bailey was fantastic last season. Morgan Rogers proved you can have a big impact from the Championship in an Unai Emery side. I'm expecting that from Philogene as well. Another wide player that joined the club is Samuel Lilling Jr. Now, he's 2 years younger than Jaden Philogene. I don't think he's going to have the instant impact Philogene could have, but the talent level is really high here. Again, really, really high. I think Juventus will have been very sorry to lose these two players and potentially Mateus Sule as well. I think Chelsea have certainly made a mistake selling Ian Maatsen. I'm actually going to bump Ian Maatsen to elite move. I really like Ian Maatsen. I think this is just such a sensational bit of business by Unai Emery. He's an upgrade on Digne. He's an upgrade on Alberto Moreno. He can invert. He can play wide. He's got Champions League experience. He's 22. Oh my gosh, I think this is such a good bit of business for like 30 million quid. I think that release clause was a horror by Chelsea. I actually think Villa have signed Chelsea's best left back. Still at Villa, by the way, we got to talk Amadou Onana. I mean, is this an elite move? It feels like an elite move. It feels like a big statement of intent. £50 million. Man United interested. Arsenal reportedly interested. Teams like Barcelona on the continent interested. Villa are saying, we're going to set our stall out. We are going to compete for the Champions League again. We're going to get one of the most coveted young midfielders in Europe through the door. And he fits that squad like a glove. With Boubacar Kamara still coming back from that ACL injury, losing Douglas Luiz, you have Onana, Ross Barkley, McGinn, Tielemans, Buendia. Morgan Rogers can kind of play in there in the 10 role. Jacob Ramsey's still on the books. Boubacar Kamara, Baranchea. The midfield is crazy. Like, it's actually crazy. I'm so hyped about Villa, I'm putting Barkley in smart deal. That leaves us with Arsenal. I've put Calafiori in here because by the time this video comes out, I'm expecting this one to have had the here we go basically be a done deal. As we stand here and I film today, it feels like it's 95% of the way there. Apologies if it's not completely done by the time you guys are viewing this, but it's basically going to happen. And look, I've been reticent about this over the past couple of weeks, haven't I? Because of the volume of defenders Arsenal have got. But the more I've thought about it, the longer I've analysed that Arsenal defensive situation, it's no bad thing to have yet another fantastic defender. Looks like Kivior is going to leave the club, and it is an upgrade. Calafiori coming in, Kivior going out, 2 years younger, probably a defensive upgrade, certainly on the ball carry upgrade. His work at Bologna was so fantastic last season. Maybe he's going to play in the left back role, and we're just going to see a lights out, beat us if you can style attitude from Arteta. We're conceding no goals because Yuri and Timber can also play there as well. I think at 45 million euros. If we're being honest, even though I've had my doubts, yeah, it's an elite move, isn't it? Okay, so there is my extended tier list of every Premier League transfer so far completed this summer. Obviously, some players were missing. I tried to explain the reasoning behind that throughout the video. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button, hit subscribe. We'll see you later.